Have you ever been on a cruise ship so opulent, so massive, that it feels like its own world floating in the middle of the ocean? Now imagine working the graveyard shift on such a ship, alone, surrounded by locked doors, endless corridors, and rules that make no sense. My name is Marcus, and I took a job as a night cleaner on the Celestial Majesty, the most luxurious cruise liner ever built. They handed me a list of rules on my first night. I thought it was a joke until the ship whispered my name. I needed a fresh start. After everything fell apart back home, losing my apartment, my girlfriend walking out, and the weight of my father's medical bills, anything seemed better than my current life. That's when I found a job posting online. Now hiring. Night shift cleaner, Celestial Majesty cruise liner. Excellent pay, room and board included. Non-negotiable adherence to rules required. Desperation dulls suspicion. I applied. 2 days later, I was flown to Miami and ferried straight onto the ship. No interviews. No paperwork beyond a waiver that absolved them of, well, everything. The Celestial Majesty was a floating palace. 10 decks, marble floors, velvet-lined hallways, golden chandeliers swinging gently with the rhythm of the sea. Guests were everywhere during boarding, laughing, drinking champagne, taking selfies in front of the massive sea view windows. But I wasn't there to mingle. I worked when they slept. On my first night, the supervisor, a pale man with sunken eyes named Mr. Roth, led me to a narrow janitor's closet behind the staff kitchen. He didn't smile, didn't blink much either. He handed me a laminated card. "Read this," he said. "Memorize it. These rules are not suggestions." I scanned the list. The words were simple, but chilling. Rules for night cleaning on the Celestial Majesty. 1. Begin your shift at precisely 12 a.m. Never before, never after. 2. Avoid Deck 7 between 1:13 a.m. and 2:34 a.m. Do not acknowledge any noises from that level. 3. If you find the ballroom lights on, turn them off immediately. Do not look into the mirrors. 4. Do not clean the children's play area. No children are allowed on night cruises. 5. If you hear footsteps behind you, do not turn around. 6. At 3:33 a.m., return to your closet and wait 5 minutes. Do not make any noise. 7. Never, ever speak to the man in the white captain's uniform. Our captain wears navy blue. 8. Your shift ends at 5 a.m. You must be inside your cabin with the door locked by 5:01 a.m. Is this some kind of elaborate hazing thing? I asked, laughing nervously. Roth's expression didn't change. Follow the rules, Marcus. You'll be fine. And with that, he disappeared down the hallway, leaving me alone with my cart of supplies and a dull ache growing in my gut. I figured I'd humor the list. I wasn't about to lose this job my first night. Midnight struck. I heard the chime from the grand clock on deck 1. I put on my gloves and started on the main dining room. Empty now, but reeking of red wine and spilled steak sauce. As I wiped down a long oak table, I caught a movement from the corner of my eye. A mirror on the far wall, the ballroom. The lights were on. Damn it. I pushed my car down the hallway and opened the ballroom doors. It was massive, elegant, and too still. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead. The walls were lined with floor-to-ceiling mirrors, all gleaming. The lights flickered. I crossed the dance floor slowly, heels of my boots echoing louder than they should. As I approached the light panel, something shifted in the mirrors. My reflection paused. I stopped. In the mirror directly across from me, My reflection stood perfectly still while I tilted my head. I waved my hand. It didn't move. Suddenly it smiled. My reflection grinned wide, impossibly wide. Its eyes blackened like ink stains spreading. I slapped the lights off. The room went pitch black except for the moonlight filtering through stained glass panels. When I looked back, all the mirrors reflected only the ballroom now. My twisted double was gone. I didn't clean the ballroom that night. The next hour passed in a blur. I kept telling myself I was just tired, stressed, maybe even dreaming. But then came 1:13 a.m. I was about to mop the hallway near Deck 7 when I glanced at my watch. 1:12. Avoid Deck 7 between 1:13 and 2:34, the card had said. I chuckled nervously and turned back, wheeling the card away. Then I heard it, music. Soft piano notes drifting from below. Familiar, like an old lullaby. The melody carried upward like smoke. And then a voice. A child humming along. I shouldn't have listened. I know that now. But I stopped at the stairwell, listening harder. My ears strained. Don't acknowledge the noises, I reminded myself. But it wasn't just a hum anymore. There was crying. It was coming from the children's play area. I didn't even realize I had descended the stairs until I saw the bright door at the end of the corridor. Kids Galaxy Zone. Ages 4 to 12, in colorful letters. The door creaked open. I didn't touch it. Inside was a dark ball pit, small plastic slides, and colorful padded floors. Everything reeked of disinfectant and something rotten. I heard giggling. Then, the giggling turned into low whispering. Come play with us. Nope, absolutely not. I backed up, heart hammering. The hallway behind me was empty. Then something moved in the ball pit. Ball shifted and rolled. A small pale hand reached up from beneath the surface. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I reached the janitor's closet. I slammed the door, heart racing. It was 3:28 a.m. 5 more minutes until the scheduled wait time. I stared at the wall. My ears rang. My skin crawled. Then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., I felt the air shift. It grew cold, ice cold. Breath misted in front of me. There was a sound, muffled and scraping. Something moving just outside the door. A dragging, like a wet sack being hauled down the hall. Slow, rhythmic. I covered my mouth and closed my eyes. The scraping stopped right outside the door. I heard breathing. Shallow, raspy. Then a knock. Just one. I waited. Another knock. This one slower, more deliberate. I didn't move a muscle. A piece of paper slid under the door. I waited until the hallway was silent again. Then, cautiously, I picked up the note. In perfect red ink, it read, "You broke 2 rules tonight. Don't let it become 3. The rest of the shift passed in a daze. I walked the decks mechanically, skipping anything that felt remotely off. At exactly 5 a.m., I returned to my cabin and locked the door behind me. The sun hadn't yet risen. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to close my eyes. When sleep did come, it brought strange dreams. Mirrors filled with teeth, decks that stretched into endless black oceans, children whispering my name from the shadows. When I woke in the afternoon, the ship was bustling. Laughter, music, sunlight flooding through the windows. It was as though nothing had happened. I approached Mr. Roth at the staff kitchen. He was pouring himself a cup of black coffee, his skin even paler under the fluorescent lights. "I got your note," I said. He didn't respond. "Who slipped it under the door?" He looked up at me, eyes cold. "We don't send warnings more than once, Marcus. The ship does." I blinked. unsure if he was joking. "What happens if I break more rules?" I asked. He took a slow sip and said, flatly, "Then the ship decides what you're worth." That night, I almost quit. I packed my duffel bag, ready to go straight to the captain and demand to be offloaded. But as I zipped the bag, I looked out my cabin window and realized we were in the middle of the ocean. No land in sight. The Celestial Majesty didn't dock again for 6 more days. I had no choice but to ride it out. I tore the rule card from my pocket and studied it again. This time, I didn't laugh. I memorized it, every line, because I had a feeling things were only going to get worse. And I was right. Dead wrong. What if I told you the most terrifying places aren't the ones you can see, but the ones you're told don't exist? The Celestial Majesty is supposed to have 12 decks. Every map confirms it. Every elevator, every staircase, every blueprint. But I found another one, Deck 13. It wasn't marked. I wasn't supposed to go there, but something wanted me to, and once I stepped inside, the ship no longer felt like a ship. It felt like a mouth closing around me. By the third night on the Celestial Majesty, I'd gotten into the rhythm. Start at midnight. Stick to the rules. Avoid Deck 7 after 1:13 a.m. Turn off the ballroom lights if they were on, but never look in the mirrors. Keep my mouth shut. Keep my head down. I followed every step precisely, but the ship, it didn't want to be ignored. At 12:47 a.m., I was cleaning a corridor on Deck 10 near the luxury suites. Mostly uneventful, quiet halls with velvet carpet and dim sconces humming softly. My cart squeaked with every push. The floor shuddered now and then, as if the ship were exhaling in its sleep. I turned a corner to clean near the theater when I saw something strange. The service elevator was open. That wasn't unusual. Staff used it all the time, but the button panel was different. Normally, the elevator only allowed access to the 10 listed guest decks and the 2 hidden maintenance levels, B1 and B2. But tonight, a new button was lit. Faint, barely glowing. It sat just below the others. Deck 13. I stared, blinked. It wasn't there yesterday. I rubbed my eyes. Still there. No Sharpa tricks, no stickers. This was built in. Real. My first instinct was to walk away. I remember what Roth said. The ship decides what you're worth. I had no desire to test its limits. But curiosity, that damn curiosity, it has teeth. I step inside. The door slid closed behind me. The elevator didn't ask for a key card or code, just accepted my choice like it had been waiting. I pressed the button for Deck 13. Nothing happened for a moment. Then, the elevator jerked. Hard. It began descending. Slow, deliberate. The floor counter flickered, skipping numbers entirely. 10, 7, 3, 1, B1, B2 then, 13. The elevator dinged softly. The doors creaked open, and I stepped out into hell. Deck 13 was not part of any cruise ship I'd ever seen. The air was wet, sticky, and thick with a coppery stench. The hallway stretched far too long for the ship's dimensions, lit by flickering overhead lights that buzzed like flies. The walls weren't white or clean like the upper levels. They were rusted, peeling, covered in graffiti that wasn't written in any language I recognized. Symbols that looked etched in, not painted. The floor was soft in some places, soggy, like damp carpet that had soaked up something foul. I shouldn't have gone in. Every part of me screamed turn back, but I walked. Something drew me forward. Not a voice, not a sound, just a pressure. The hallway ended at a heavy metal door, like a vault, painted black, no handle, just a circular indentation in the center. As I stepped closer, the indentation lit up blood red, and a low chime rang out like a sonar ping under deep water. The door opened. Inside was a room filled with mirrors, not like the ballroom above. These were old, dusty, warped, floor to ceiling, dozens of them, each mismatched, some shattered, some fogged over, some so clear they reflected things that weren't in the room, like me, but turned the wrong direction. In one of the mirrors, my reflection was walking away while I stood still. In another, I had no face. One mirror showed me cleaning. Only the mop was dragging a body, not a bucket. I stumbled back and the door slammed shut behind me. I wasn't alone anymore. There was a shadow in the corner, too tall, too thin. It stretched and moved like smoke, but carried weight. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel it watching me. Then it whispered, "You've been noticed." The lights blew out. I don't remember much after that. I think I blacked out. When I came to, I was lying in the service elevator, the doors open on deck 3. Deck 13 was gone. The button had disappeared. I stumbled to the janitor's closet, shaking, drenched in sweat. When I peeled off my gloves, my fingers were stained red. Not paint, not wine, blood. The next afternoon, I demanded answers. I barged into Roth's office in the staff wing. He looked up from a thick ledger and closed it with a sigh. "You went to deck 13. Not a question, a statement." I opened my mouth, but he raised a hand. "Don't speak, just listen." He stood and walked to a locked cabinet, opened it, and pulled out a file. Inside was a photo, grainy, black and white. It showed the Celestial Majesty during construction, except the hull bore a different name. The ship was built in 1972 as a military transport vessel, codenamed the Atramentus. There was no Deck 13 then, either. Not officially. He handed me a sheet from the folder, an incident report. It listed a crew of 15 who went missing mid-voyage during a sea trial in 1974. They disappeared while doing maintenance. One by one. No signs. No bodies. Only blood trails leading to a sealed compartment deep in the lower hold. "Deck 13, I whispered. He nodded. They built over it, pretended it never existed. But this ship, it remembers. And it tests people, especially those who stray. I swallowed hard. Why me? He looked tired. Because you heard it. Most people don't. But if it notices you, it doesn't forget. So what do? Ross slid me another card. This one had only one line. "You are not lost unless you answer when it calls." Before I left, he added, "Whatever you saw, whatever followed you, it'll keep trying. Deck 13 isn't a place. It's a door. And once it opens for you, it opens again easier next time." That night, I scrubbed the dining hall with trembling hands. Every shadow looked wrong. Every sound echoed too long. At 2:20 a.m., I passed a window overlooking the ocean. It was pitch black outside, except something was swimming alongside the ship. I pressed my face to the glass, squinting. It was massive. No fins, no tail, just a sprawling shape like oil and water, matching the ship's speed. It disappeared beneath the waves, and a chill went up my spine. Then from behind me, "Hello, cleaner." I spun around. A man stood at the end of the hallway. Perfect white captain's uniform. Tall, hands folded behind his back. Rule number 7 flashed in my mind like a siren. Never speak to the man in the white captain's uniform. He stepped forward, slowly. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You've been exploring places that don't belong to you." My throat went dry. My tongue refused to move. That's okay. The ship likes to test its pieces. But you must choose now. I stayed silent. His face flickered, glitched like bad reception on a screen. Will you open the door? Or will you be the key? I backed away slowly. He didn't follow. When I blinked, he was gone. Only the faint scent of seawater and burnt ozone lingered. I sprinted to the janitor's closet, slamming the door behind me. At 3:33 a.m., I held my breath and waited. This time, no knock. Only a new note slid under the door. Deck 13 remembers you. By morning, I couldn't tell if I was awake or dreaming anymore. The ship looked the same, but I'd changed. I was unraveling. I checked the service elevator again. No button. Deck 13 had vanished. But as I cleaned near the stern later that night, I found something odd behind a loose maintenance panel, etched in rust. 13 isn't a deck. It's a door. And below that, scratched deep into the wall. Every door wants to open. You know that sinking feeling when someone calls your name, and you don't remember telling them who you are? That's what it felt like when he said it. Hello, Marcus. I never told him my name. I never even looked him in the eyes. But the man in the white uniform, he knew. And now, he's not just watching. He's coming. Every night, I follow the rules, but he's rewriting them. And tonight, I found something even worse than Deck 13. I found where the mirrors lead. I haven't slept since I saw him. The man in the white captain's uniform. The rules say never speak to him. I didn't, but he spoke to me, and that broke something. After that night, nothing felt right anymore. The ship still hummed softly during the day, but it sounded more like whispering than machinery. My coworkers avoided eye contact. I swear I saw one janitor, Carlos, walking backwards down a hallway. Not stumbling, not confused, deliberate, like he was rewinding. When I tried to ask him about it later, he just smiled and said, "I'm not supposed to be here yet," then walked off. I checked the rules again. Every line was etched into my mind now, especially rule number 2. If the man in the white uniform asks your name, you must not answer. If you already have, prepare. I hadn't answered him out loud, but he still knew. It was my 4th night on the ship. I started my shift with a knot in my gut. At 1 a.m., I was assigned to clean the ballroom again, the one with the endless mirrors. I hesitated. I remembered what happened the first time I went in. But refusing a cleaning route wasn't an option. Not unless you wanted to end up like Carl, the mop guy they mentioned on day 1. No one talks about him now. So I did what I was told. I wheeled my cart to the ballroom doors and opened them slowly. Inside, the chandeliers glittered like frost. A haunting waltz played softly from invisible speakers. The room was empty, yet too full. The mirrors stretched from floor to ceiling, warped and rippling like water. Each one reflected not just the room, but different versions of it. Some showed people dancing. Some were dark and wet. One had a flickering version of me, smiling with black teeth. I turned off the music. Rule number 4. The silence that followed felt heavy, as if the air was thickening, pushing against me. I kept my eyes low, focused on mopping, but I couldn't help it. I glanced up. One of the mirrors, it showed a door. A black metal door with a red circle in the center. Deck 13. It wasn't in the real room, only in the reflection. I turned around. Nothing. But when I faced the mirror again, the door was closer. I took a step back. The music turned on by itself. This time, a different melody, slower, twisted, and in the farthest mirror, I saw him, the man in the white uniform. He wasn't standing still. He was walking toward the mirror's edge. No, he was walking toward me, from inside the reflection. I spun around. Empty. Turn back. He was closer. Closer. Marcus. I ran. I didn't stop until I was in the service stairwell, panting like I'd run miles. I gripped the railing to steady myself, and that's when I noticed it. My reflection in the small glass panel of the door was smiling. I wasn't. It lifted a hand and touched the glass. I hadn't moved. Then it mouthed a word I couldn't hear, but I understood. Soon, I backed away, not breaking eye contact, and slammed the next door shut behind me. I tried to find Roth, the head cleaner, the only one who seemed to know what the hell was going on. But he wasn't in his office. In fact, his office door was missing entirely. In its place was another note, taped to the wall. Preparation is choice. Choice is sacrifice. Below it, scrawled in red ink, or blood, were 3 new rules. They weren't on the original list. They read, 1. Do not answer to your name after 3 a.m. 2. Mirrors are thresholds. Some are open, some are hungry. 3. When offered the captain's key, refuse it. It opens what cannot be closed. I tore the note down and pocketed it. Suddenly, a woman screamed down the hall. I ran toward the sound. It came from a crew hallway near the spa deck. One of the cleaning staff, Maria, was standing frozen in front of a full-length mirror. Her face was twisted in terror. Maria. I yelled. She didn't respond, just stared. I grabbed her shoulders, shook her gently. Her eyes never moved from the glass. I turned to look. In the mirror, she was still standing there, but someone else was behind her. A tall, pale figure with hands resting lightly on her shoulders. In real life, no one was there. But then, her reflection smiled, and in a voice I'll never forget, Maria whispered, "He's behind you." I turned. Nothing. When I looked back, her reflection was gone, and so was Maria. She collapsed into my arms, unconscious, but breathing. The mirror now showed only me. I carried her to the infirmary. The nurse on duty didn't ask questions, just gave me a nod like this wasn't the first time. On my way out, I passed another mirror in the hallway. This one wasn't warped or cracked, perfectly clean. I saw myself, but behind me, the man in the white uniform. "You're changing," he said softly from the reflection. "Soon you'll see what I see." I clenched my fists. "What do you want from me?" His grin widened. "To offer you a key, when you've already started to turn." That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I waited. I stayed in my closet, lights off, mop across my lap like a weapon. At 3:33 a.m., the knock came. 3 slow taps, then silence. I didn't move. A slip of paper slid under the door again. This one was different. It wasn't typed. It was a photograph. It showed me standing in the ballroom, facing a mirror. Only I wasn't holding a mop. I was holding the captain's key. And behind me, rows of bodies hanging upside down, their faces smeared off like wax melted in heat. I dropped the photo. My hand was shaking. Another knock. This time, faster. I opened the closet and stepped out. No one there. But taped to the opposite wall was a small, metal key. Silver. Ornate. It pulsed in the light, as if breathing. The tag on it read, "For the door beneath the pool." There is no door beneath the pool. At least, there shouldn't be. But I remembered something. A rumor among the crew. They said the ship had an old maintenance hatch under the pool deck, sealed for years, part of an unused ballast control system. A hatch no one talks about, no one touches. I had to see for myself. I went to the pool deck at 4:10 a.m. The water was still, too still, like glass. I moved toward the rear service path, past the lifeguard station, and found a locked gate. Beyond it, an old maintenance ladder leading down into the dark. I used the captain's key. It clicked open. The hatch creaked, and I descended into a narrow corridor that shouldn't exist. The smell hit me instantly, salt and rotten metal. The walls were wet, pulsing. It didn't feel like a ship anymore. It felt like a womb. At the end of the hall was another door. Black steel, the same as the one in the mirror room. It had no handle, only the red circle in the middle. As I approached, it lit up and opened. Inside was a massive chamber filled with water. But it wasn't ocean water. It was still like a deep black lake. Floating just above the surface were bodies. Not dead, not alive, just suspended. Some were crew, some were passengers, some were me. Dozens of me, each one different, smiling, crying, screaming. Their eyes opened as one, and they spoke in unison. "He chose you." I turned to run, but the door slammed shut. The man in the white uniform stepped from the shadows, no longer smiling. "The ship is waking up, and it needs a new key. They say cruise ships are floating cities, but what they don't tell you is that some of them are alive. Beneath the elegance, behind the polished decks and the smiling staff, there's something deeper, something breathing." Last night, I found the truth hiding under the pool deck. A dark chamber filled with reflections of me, all whispering the same thing. "He chose you." But I don't remember being given a choice. And now, the ship is waking up. The chamber door slammed shut behind me, locking me inside with him, the man in the white uniform. No escape. He stood between me and the floating figures, his eyes no longer human. They were silver, swirling, like whirlpools pulling light inward. "You've touched the key," he said, his voice echoing unnaturally in the chamber. "You've opened what was sealed, and now the ship knows you." I shook my head. I didn't agree to this. I was just cleaning floors. "But you follow the rules. You survive the rules. Most don't." He stepped forward. Water rippled beneath his shoes, though he didn't seem to touch it. "This vessel sails on memory, Marcus. Not water, not fuel. Memory, pain, sacrifice. All vessels like this one require a caretaker, someone to preserve the rules, maintain the balance." My hands trembled. I never agreed. "You didn't have to. The ship chose." The chamber suddenly pulsed. Not just the water, the air itself. A groan rolled through the space, like metal bending under pressure. The floating bodies shifted, and one of them began to sink. I stepped toward it, and as the face broke through the water, I realized with a jolt, it was Maria. Her eyes opened. She gasped. Without thinking, I dove in. The water was cold, but not ocean cold, cellar cold, like touching a forgotten crypt. I reached her quickly, wrapping an arm around her limp body and kicking upward. The surface was harder than it should have been, like rising through tar. But finally, I broke through, gasping for air, dragging her with me. The man in white was gone. So was the chamber. I was in the cruise sauna, soaking wet and shivering. Maria still unconscious at my side. It made no sense. There was no door, no sign of the black steel room, just faint fog and the scent of eucalyptus. I shook her gently. "Maria, wake up." Her eyes fluttered open and then went wide with terror. She clutched my shirt and whispered, "He's going to open the mirror. The big one. You have to stop it before the ballroom becomes the doorway." I got her to the infirmary again. The nurse barely blinked when I carried her in, just nodded grimly and said, "You found her. Good. But now he knows you've been below. What is this place? I asked. What the hell is going on with this ship? The nurse met my gaze and said one word. Feeder. Before I could speak, she turned back to her files. If he gave you the key, you're part of it now. Either you become the next Roth, or you burn with the rest. Roth. I hadn't seen him in days. Was this what happened to him? I stumbled into the crew lounge, soaked and panicked, and grabbed my phone. The ship's internal network was isolated, but I still had notes saved. I reviewed the original list of rules and compared it with the second set, the red-inked ones. Something clicked. The rules weren't just guidelines. They were rituals, each one designed to keep the balance in place. And one stood out now more than ever. When offered the captain's key, refuse it. Too late. I'd accepted it the moment I used it. The ship had seen that. It had accepted me, unless I could undo it. That night, I skipped my assigned route. I knew I was breaking protocol, but I had no choice. If the ballroom mirror was the doorway, as Maria said, I had to see it before he could use it. I snuck in through the lower deck passage, bypassing the cameras. The ballroom was empty, at least in reality. In the mirrors, the room was packed. Elegant passengers in 1920s formal wear waltzed to silent music, glassy-eyed and robotic. A party locked in time. I crept forward. The mirrors rippled slightly as I passed, like disturbed water. My reflection staggered a second behind me. Then I saw it. At the center of the ballroom, where there should have been open space, stood a giant mirror, at least 12 feet tall, framed in brass, covered by a black velvet curtain. That wasn't there before. I approached slowly. The closer I got, the colder the air became. The velvet rippled, even though no wind blew. Then I heard it. Whispers from behind the curtain. Dozens of voices. Pleading, laughing, crying. Let us in. We remember you. We danced with you once. My fingers hovered over the curtain's edge. I knew I shouldn't, but I had to see. I yanked the curtain back. There was no reflection. The mirror was solid black, infinite and swallowing. And in it, I saw every version of me, each one twisted in some way. One had no eyes. Another had a stitch mouth. One was screaming endlessly into the void. They all turned to look at me. The stitch mouth one held out a hand, finger extended, and pointed to the floor. I followed the motion. There, carved into the ballroom's wooden boards, was a trapdoor. Small, unmarked. I hadn't seen it before. Suddenly, a hand shot out from the mirror. I fell backward, slamming against a column as the black glass rippled like liquid. The man in the white uniform stepped through. No more illusions. He looked like me, exactly like me, but older, worn, dead behind the eyes. This ship doesn't need a captain, he said, voice distorted. It needs a caretaker. I scrambled backward. Why me? He smiled. Because you haven't forgotten. That's what powers it. Memory. You remember the girl, the screaming, the fairy fire, the ice. I froze. Images slammed into my head like lightning strikes. A girl with braids, my sister, a fairy accident, a fire. I had blocked it out, but the ship knew. This is how we feed it, he said. Every time a soul brings memory aboard, the ship devours it, and every caretaker must be a keeper of pain. I stood, heart pounding. I'm not doing this. I won't become you. His smile cracked, revealing black gums and bone. You already are. Suddenly, the ballroom lights exploded above me. Glass rained down. The music returned, blaring now, warping like a cassette melting in the sun. The other mirrors lit up. Every single one showed him. Or me. I couldn't tell anymore. I ran, but not out of the room. I ran to the trapdoor. I pried it open and jumped through. I landed hard. Concrete. Dust. A tunnel. Dimly lit with flickering bulbs. Old. Forgotten. Not part of any map I'd seen. At the end of it stood Roth. Alive. But barely. Thin. Pale. Eyes hollow. He didn't speak. Just extended a shaking hand and dropped something into my palm. A photograph. It was him, in the ballroom, surrounded by the same floating bodies I'd seen. But he was smiling, willing. He whispered one word. Burn. Then he turned and walked into the dark. I stumbled through the tunnel until I emerged behind the ship's generator room. It was then I realized the truth. The ship ran on more than fuel. It ran on us, on those who remembered, on trauma, on guilt. And if Roth was right, the only way to end it was to sever the memory, or sever the ship. Back in my closet bunk, I found the original rules tucked in my bag. A new line had been scrawled across the bottom. All rules break when fire meets reflection. I understood. Tomorrow night, I'll return to the ballroom. I'm bringing gasoline. I'm bringing fire. And I'm going to burn the mirror down before the ship opens fully and everyone on board becomes part of it forever. There's no going back. Not after what I saw in the ballroom. Not after what I remembered. I now know what the cruise ship really is. A floating mausoleum of souls, bound by trauma and ancient rituals. And I know what I have to do, burn the mirror. But the ship has a mind of its own, and it won't let me go without a fight. Tonight, I either destroy the heart of this nightmare, or become its next heartbeat. The gasoline sloshed heavily in the maintenance jug as I made my way through the narrow staff corridor, hidden behind the bulkhead panels on deck 3. The crew didn't question me anymore. They didn't even look at me. Maybe they sensed it too, that the ship was nearing some threshold, some irreversible edge. Every hallway groaned like ribs cracking under pressure. The walls pulsed ever so slightly, like lungs inhaling salt and memory. I had one goal: reach the ballroom, soak the mirror, and light the flame. But I had no plan for what came after. I reached the ballroom entrance. The door was wide open. Inside, a gala was in full swing. Except it wasn't real. None of the guests were guests. They were hollowed out versions of themselves. Passengers, crew, maybe even people long dead. They danced in silence, expressionless and puppet-like, moving with eerie synchronization. In the far corner stood the mirror, unveiled and gleaming like oil under moonlight. It no longer reflected anything real. Instead, I saw versions of myself, twisted, broken, screaming. Some were missing limbs. Others had pitch-black eyes. One of them smiled with a mouth full of keys. I stepped inside. The music warped into an underwater waltz, distorted and dragging. The air thickened, like breathing through velvet. As I walked through the dancers, none looked at me, but the mirror did. I felt it watching. Then I saw her, Maria, standing beside the mirror, eyes glazed over, lips moving in silent prayer. I ran to her, grabbing her arm. "Maria, it's me," I shouted. She blinked, like shaking off a trance. Then, tears welled in her eyes. "He's coming," she whispered. "You have to do it now, Marcus." Once he steps through again, we're all gone. I opened the gasoline can. The dancers stopped. Every single one of them turned in unison toward me. Their faces split into crooked smiles. "Caretaker," they whispered in perfect sync. "He accepts his crown." I didn't wait. I doused the base of the mirror, splashing the fuel upward until the brass frame dripped. I pulled out the flare I'd stolen from the emergency locker. But as I struck it, the ballroom began to sink. The floor cracked in the center and dipped, revealing rotted beams and writhing black tendrils beneath. The ship screamed, not with metal or alarms, but with voices, 1,000 all at once. He was coming. The man in white stepped from the mirror. His skin peeled away as he moved. His face melted and reformed with every step, shifting between Roth, myself, and someone else entirely. Something ancient and salt-worn. If you destroy the mirror, the ship will take you with it, he hissed. I raised the flare, then let it. I dropped it. Fire exploded upward, catching the gasoline-soaked mirror instantly. The glass cracked. The dancers screamed, not with pain, but desperation. They rushed me, grabbing at my arms, wailing to be saved. The ship's walls turned black, oozing something thick and tar-like. Flames reflected endlessly in the cracked surface as the mirror shattered into spiderwebs of twisted silver. The man in white lunged at me, but Maria stepped in front of him, clutching something I hadn't seen before, the photograph Roth gave me. She pressed it to his chest. The man convulsed, howled like a steam engine, and split open into ribbons of darkness that were sucked back into the mirror. I grabbed Maria and pulled her away as the glass shattered. And then, everything went dark. I woke up on a lifeboat, floating under a cloudless sky. Alone. No ship, no wreckage, just silence and sea. For a moment, I thought it had all been a hallucination, a fever dream born from overwork and isolation. But then I checked my pocket. The rule sheet was still there, burned along the edges, smudged, but legible. And at the bottom, one final line had appeared, written in smeared red ink. When the final rule is broken, the caretaker is freed. I drifted for hours before a cargo ship spotted me. They took me aboard, asked questions, gave me food, but I said little. What did I explain? That I had been the last night cleaner on a haunted luxury cruise ship that fed on grief and memory? That I destroyed its anchor by setting a cursed mirror on fire and watched a demon melt into my own face? They wouldn't understand. So I said I fell overboard during cleaning duty. They accepted that. Eventually, I was flown home. I tried to resume a normal life. Got a job at a diner. Rented a small apartment. Attended group therapy, but never spoke. Still, some nights, I dream of waves slapping steel, of silent dancers, of the mirror whispering my name. And sometimes, when I pass by reflective glass, I swear I see him, my reflection smiling, even when I'm not. 6 months later, I received a package, no return address. Inside, a photograph of the ballroom, burned, decayed, and empty. And a note, it sails again soon. There must always be one. I burned the photo, but that night, when I went to brush my teeth, the mirror fogged up with steam, and on the glass, traced by an unseen finger, were 5 words. Do you remember the rules? So that was my last night on the luxury cruise ship, a vessel that didn't just sail through the ocean, but through grief, memory, and the thin veil between our world and something much darker. I thought I destroyed it, but some things don't burn. Some things wait. If you ever find yourself working the night shift in a place with strange rules, don't just follow them blindly. Ask why they're there, because by the time you figure out, it might already be too late. Would you board a ship like this? What do you think happened to Maria or Roth? Drop your theories in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more terrifying tales from the edge of reality. See you on the next haunting voyage. The end.